Jamaicans should by now be aware of the serious negative effects which the threat of sanctions by the United States against Russian bauxite company UC Rusal is having on the operations of Rusal's Windalco plant at Yorton in St. Catherine. The situation has reached crisis proportions and endangers the jobs and livelihood of the approximately 1,000 direct and indirect workers at the plant. In April, I urged the government to find ways to safeguard the interests of the 600 direct and 400 indirect workers at Windalco. I have had discussions with both the Windalco management and the Minister of Mining, Honorable Robert Montague, separately, and shared with them possible options for obtaining some financial reprieve for Windalco and for securing the jobs and livelihoods of the Jamaican workers. Just over a week ago, I again drew the nation's attention to the fact that the company was facing a severe cash crunch, resulting in workers initially receiving only part of their salaries. On Monday, May 14, workers had received a communique from the company's general manager advising that they would receive only half of their monthly salary the following week. Subsequently, the workers received not a half, but rather only a quarter of their salaries. Thankfully, since then, Windalco's management has employed creative methods and were able to sell some of their agricultural produce, their Jamaican production, which enabled them to pay salaries in full for the month of May. The challenge still remains for the continued payment of salaries for next month and beyond, and to keep the operations open, production going, and the workers employed. It is my understanding that the cash flow challenge at the company has arisen in large measure because Windalco has been denied access to financial resources through the banking system, even though the American government has itself delayed the imposition of the contemplated sanctions against UC Rusal. With this delay by the U.S., the banking system in other countries has continued to provide banking services to the company with the approval of the U.S. authorities. The opposition is urging the government not to sit idly by and allow more than 1,000 Jamaicans to be thrown out of work and to have to face the frightful reality of not being able to take care of their families in a situation that they have no control over and have not been able to plan for. While other governments around the world have utilized various initiatives, including diplomatic channels, to secure the interests of their citizens employed by Rusal, the Jamaican government has so far failed to take any similar or other action aimed at resolving the issue, any that I'm aware of. As opposition spokesman on mining, I have today written to the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, of the U.S. Department of Treasury, which administers and enforces economic and trade sanctions for the U.S. government. As an opposition and government in waiting, we understand that OFAC is mandated to conduct its work based on U.S. foreign policy, economic and national security goals. We believe, however, that there is a strong case to be made through available diplomatic channels for the issue involving UC Rusal to be resolved in the mutual interest of the United States and Jamaica. Other countries, including Ireland, Sweden, Guyana, and others, have utilized this channel and have benefited from positive consideration and action by the United States in allowing significant reprieve under the sanctions regime. The opposition urges the government of Jamaica to immediately pursue similar actions and representation in the interest of our country, the nation's continued economic development, and on behalf of the 1,000 workers at Windalco. Continued inaction on this matter is not an option for Jamaica. In the absence of an explanation by the government, the inaction of the administration so far in this regard may be interpreted as reflecting a level of insensitivity to the plight of the Jamaican workers at the plant. This seemingly insensitivity on the part of the administration is heightened by information which the opposition has now received from reliable sources that the government has, without notice to Vindalco, terminated the company's mining license to operate the Kirkvine plant in Manchester. The opposition views this latest move by the government as precipitous and unnecessarily callous and insensitive, given the consideration of the current environment that the company faces. The opposition is again calling on the government to come to the nation with a fulsome plan on how they intend to resolve this matter for the benefit of the workers and the wider national economy. I expect that the minister will address this situation in a comprehensive way when he speaks in the sectoral debate tomorrow. The opposition further notes news reports that Russian businessman Oleg Deripaska, who is a main target of the sanctions initially announced by the U.S. government, has stepped down as a director of N Group, which owns about half of UC Rosal. We are also aware of reports that Mr. Deripaska will not be seeking re-election as a director of UC Rosal at the company's forthcoming annual general meeting. UC Rosal was among 12 Russian companies and their principals who were targeted to be sanctioned on April 6 by the U.S. government over what the U.S. authorities considered Russia's malign activities around the globe, including reported military interventions and cyber attacks. Rusal, the world's second largest alumina producer, owns 93% of Vindalco, which operates the Euroton Works in St. Catherine and the Kirkvine Alumina Refinery in Manchester. Up to 2 years ago, Rusal also owned the Alpart Refinery in St. Elizabeth. In 2016, UC Rusal sold its Alpart plant at Nain to Chinese industrial group Gisco. This was brokered by the then government led by the People's National Party. Our government at the time was also made concessions to Rusal in a bid to save the jobs of the workers at Vindalco. It is high time that this government breaks its silence in this matter and protect the Vindalco workers as well as the wider national economic interests. Thank you.
Okay, that was a statement. Any questions? If I may, Michael Shaw from JN noted on page 4 so that they received from good source that they have removed the mining license to operate the Kirkvine plant in Manchester. Why would this be so, and who will be getting that license?
Well, yes, it is quite troubling. I know that when I was minister, we argued about plants that were closed, and you had Alpart and Kirkvine. We focused on Alpart because we see it as the only viable plant to be reopened, and we were engaged in a process with the company that ended after some negotiations and threats, with the plant being sold to another company who can reestablish it. Now, we did not pursue Kirkvine because that plant realistically cannot be reopened in the way it used to operate, and that it does require tremendous creativity in what is to be done there. But out of the blue, without any discussion, I believe that it is at this time inappropriate for the government to seek to terminate those mining licenses for Kirkvine without engaging in negotiations, without putting forward a plan, as we did with Alpart, and at a time when the company cannot find money to pay its workers, to be now looking for the company to deal with Kirkvine. I just think that it is totally inappropriate and insensitive and poor timing. And I believe that this will distract the company, because knowing them, I'm sure it is going to lead to a legal battle. And the legal battle will not be waged in Jamaica, but the licenses do provide for such matters to be dealt with in English courts. So I know that that is going to be a problem that we will have to face immediately. And I do not believe that it is worth it at this stage for the country to be engaged in such a battle.
A quick follow-up on that one. Terminating, not negotiating. Based on the law of the land, which I would suspect you know more than us, are there consequences to that?
Yes, in my time, I had to give notice of termination, and the law does require at least 6 months. So the news that I'm getting is that without even that, they have received notice that the license has been terminated. I need clarification from the government to see whether or not we are in breach of our own contract and our rules, and why would this be necessary at this time.
Your source told you it's a Chinese that they will get the license.
No, I'm not aware of who is being lined up. I really believe that at this time, that should not be in our contemplation. What we need to do is to use our best efforts to get the U.S. administration to provide a reprieve, as they have done in the other countries where Rusal operates. It is because the Jamaican government has not been forceful. In fact, they have not at all sought to intervene to assist. And it's a clear case of making representation to OFAC and alerting them as to the dire straits that we are in. And because the sanctions have not yet been applied, the banks are not dealing with the company out of fear. But there are no sanctions today against the company. And I think OFAC can assist the situation by saying to the Jamaican bankers, you can deal with this company without any repercussion.
Yes.
My question is, my name is Gary Morris from Jamaica Observer. My question is, do you have a timeline as to when the license was terminated?
No, I just got the information this morning that the company received notification from the government of the license for Kirkvine, which has been closed. But the important thing is that the company utilized such license because it provides for them reserves that are valuable on their books, and that they were notified that those licenses have been terminated. And we do believe that at this time it is really unconscionable for the government to take that stance.
My other question is, apart from the loss of jobs, what other implications do you foresee in terms of the sanctions that were imposed and the bauxite industry?
Well, apart from the loss of jobs, you know that this country has been grappling with growth. We have not been able to grow the economy in the way that we were planning to grow the economy. The bauxite alumina sector is one area where, and just because of GISCO, we are seeing modest growth. This is going to affect that growth if Windalco, unfortunately, would have to be closed. It has tremendous repercussions, not only the 1,000 jobs, but this is a company that also purchases goods and services in Jamaica. It sells dairy milk products to the wider society. So it is going to have deep economic repercussions, negative repercussions, once, God forbid, they are closed. And of course, very importantly, the way alumina is produced now requires constant vigilance of the operations of the waste, the residue. So, for example, the Red Mud Lake that is managed by them, we run the risk of that management not being in place and not being vigilant, and the resources being provided to ensure it is fully sustainable. I can't overemphasize the importance of this issue as it relates to the environment, because if you don't have the resources to maintain that, then all kinds of negatives can befall us. I don't really want to create panic, but the management of the Red Mud Lake is crucial, and they were planning to do another lake, to expand the facilities, put in other measures now to safeguard the contents, and to do another lake. That requires money as well.
Yeah.
John Paul up here from Robinson. Comment that I would love to ask Mr. Dali this question because it's a public relation, international relation. I have noticed that there's a slack off between the government and the international relationship. Is this one of those examples?
I am not the official, thank you for your question, Mr. Pollock. I am not the official spokesman or spokesperson for foreign affairs for the People's National Party, but I'm sufficiently aware, based on my past exposure and experience of international matters. What the spokesman mining has indicated is that other countries, and he named Sweden, Ireland, Guyana, have used the diplomatic leverage that is available, connections, talking, to get a reprieve for UC Russell operating in those countries. I think the government of Jamaica has not utilized the diplomatic channel sufficiently up to now. We are not aware of any moves that they have made to deal with the United States. Normally, PNP administration have sent a delegation to the Department of Treasury, would be in the United States. Our ambassador will be talking to them, trying to find ways and means to ease the pressure, because as Mr. Paulwell said, the sanctions have not yet come into place. I think it's in December.
No, till October 23rd.
Till October 23rd. And as far as the spokesman has indicated, I am not aware, we have not heard anything, I don't know if the media heard anything, any move, any announcement by the government that 2 top-level ministers and a business group or somebody has gone to Washington to talk to the U.S. Department of Treasury and the U.S. State Department about these things. I don't know if they are credible enough to do these things, but I think they are lacking in their approach to diplomatic relations and foreign affairs.
If I might add to member MP Dallas' remark, Mr. Paulwell indicated that we are not aware of any efforts. Quite frankly, if there are any efforts, it ought not to be a secret. Why? Because as indicated, there are over 1,000 workers that will be impacted, their families, and the various communities in which the Rusal Windalco activities are. The level of apprehension that exists in these communities is very high, and it's the responsibility of any caring government to speak to the people, keep them abreast, be aware, and if they are making any positive efforts to allay those fears and apprehension. That is the responsibility of a government. What we are seeing is dead silence in the midst of a crisis. Much the same way we hear of a loud silence by the government when it comes to crime and violence. We see the dead silence when it relates to the corruption at Petrojam and other places. It's a pattern of this government, and the people of Jamaica deserves much more than that.
I mean, sir, the issue of protocol.
Right.
What behoves you? Who gives you the right, as opposition spokesman, to write to OFAC as if you are government?
Yes. I believe that in the absence of the government doing so, I do have a responsibility, as does the union. In fact, the union has preceded me. They have sent their letter already this morning to OFAC. They have a vested interest in their workers being continually employed. We have a vested interest in the Jamaican workers being employed. So in the absence of government of Jamaica moving forward, we are going to take that responsibility on.
You have the local standard.
We have
We won't
absolute
sit
local
idly by
standard.
and allow the Jamaican people to suffer unnecessarily.
As it relates to how the Americans work and OFAC work,
Yes.
what kind of weight would you expect them to put on your?
Well, I think the issue has to be brought forcibly to them that our people are going to be suffering. They have started to suffer. That if this plant were to close, we are going to have tremendous hardship. And this is at a time when the sanctions have not yet been imposed. And this is just for them to say to the Jamaican banking community, don't worry, we are not going to penalize you. if you deal with Rusal. That's all we need to do now to get the company to have a cash flow to save the jobs and to continue the operations.
You make your letter available to us.
Of course.
Also, I mean, even if OFAC does say, okay, sure, go ahead, I'm sure the banks locally may be looking on and thinking, we just seen what's happening internationally in some of these other places that were seemingly affected. Yes, their government initiative, our government is yet to. What we're wondering is when a board of several members just step down and walk away, doesn't that send a message outside of what OFAC is going to tell them? Local banks are still.
No, I think it's two separate things. We have right now a situation where sanctions are not in effect. There are banks who are aware of the U.S. threat. In fact, the U.S. had imposed and granted relief. They are aware of that. So their mindset now is to ensure that they don't run into trouble with the U.S. What Guyana has done, their government, they have written to OFAC, and OFAC has been able to directly deal with the banks there to say, listen, this is not going to affect you. Our banks need such reassurance, and it is for the government to initiate that action.
Originally, we heard talks from the government, the minister at the time, that there were plans in place to speak to persons in the White House, to go to Washington possibly and all of that. And you said there's been nothing since.
No, we are not aware of any follow-up. Indeed, because of the inaction on the part of the government, we know for sure that OFAC has not been in communication, or our banking system has not been in communication with them, and it is creating this level of inertia and cash flow deficit in the part of the company.
So, Paul,
Yes.
the minister now, Gospel Parliament, praised you
Yes.
in terms of how you behaved, that others perhaps who are close to you should behave a similar way,
Yes.
as it relates to crime.
Yes.
And that the negotiations were going on well, you took your ideas.
Yes.
Is it that they have gone secret, they have gone in terms of negotiations to keep it quiet, or is it that you have just been totally left out of the loop?
Yes, we had, and I did commend the minister for the initiative. I think it's good when you have a national crisis for both government and opposition to come together. And I did so sincerely, shared certain ideas. I have been wanting to continue those discussions. And for a number of reasons, we have not been able to continue that. We represent the national interest. And even though we're trying to ensure good relations between ourselves and our government, when the national interest is in peril, we have no choice but to do what we're doing today, to bring it forcibly to the attention of the country and to call upon the government for action.
Are you likely to raise the matter at the end of Parliament today now? Seeking, because of the national crisis that there is, that you want to bring it up?
Yeah. It might be for tomorrow, because I do anticipate the minister will be speaking in the sectoral debate. So at the end of Parliament tomorrow, if I don't hear something tangible, then at the close of the sitting, I'll have to rise to bring such a matter to the attention of the country again.
Inform the speaker before?
And I will so do.
I think there might be a statement by the minister this afternoon.
Yeah.
If he doesn't,
No, not
then-
him.
Yeah.
Okay, my question is, in regards to, the lack of information that you say that the government has not been putting out, have you then made any interactions with the government themselves?
Yes, I would not have come here without doing that first.
Okay, and what was
I'm awaiting the response of the minister. I'm sure in due course he will, but I think time is against us. We have to act now.
Okay, thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to reading and listening.